Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. I am very excited today because we have special guest, Mr. Matt. Thanks so much for being here.
You got it, Bryce.
Welcome to the podcast. So I just have to say, this is like kind of like a full circle-ish moment for me, just because like our relationship has transitioned so vastly over the last 3-4 years. And we've gone from, borrowing money from you and now being lenders ourselves. Yeah. And like you've definitely been a mentor of sorts for me. So this is really exciting for me because I get to pick your brain and ask you questions, but now from this perspective rather than, from a borrower perspective.
No, I love it. It's also been really cool to see your progression, and intentionality from how you're transitioning and then get more into the lending. And
I wish you would have told me like 3 years ago, like just stop what you're doing and just do lending because it's so much better than owning rentals and doing all these things anyway. It's so dumb.
Well, but, and maybe we'll talk about this. There's a progression everyone has. It's like you got to sometimes go through that to really understand what you like doing, what you don't like doing. But then, obviously buying those rentals created, he had a really good time over the last 4 years.
True.
That you probably wouldn't have had as quickly the equity that then you
otherwise
think about how to transition into hard money loans.
For sure. And I tell people that all the time is like, we're not like, we did very well. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're good investors. Like we just got into real estate at a good time.
Yep.
Like the market just went up and up. Like as you've seen, like probably hundreds of times, like even with borrowers, they could be a horrible operator. Property 3 months longer than they should have, and magically it's now worth $15,000 more than what the original ARV was.
Oh, 100%. And even just like owning in real estate for a long period of time, even if you're not great at it, but you have good financing. Like I met with a borrower at his house and he was finishing up the remodel and his plumber was there. I mean, his plumber looked like he was maybe borderline homeless dude, right? But he was also working and he's like, hey, so I was telling him a little about what I do. And he's like, well, I'm going to need a place. I'm going to have about $3 million, and it's because 20 guy just bought 15 plexes, 20 plexes, and he
just held on to him forever.
And it's like, dude, where else would you have made or could make that much money saving?
For real. Yeah, not possible.
So your point though, of like, if you finance it right and just hang on and you're in a good market, which anywhere pretty much in the US over that time period, if you're in a metro area, it's gonna create so much value.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's crazy. We're so lucky because there's just no way that we would have been able to and we did fine. Like I wish obviously I had bought more, but like when we ended up cashing everything out, which, we can talk about that later on if we want, but we're probably around like 1.5 to 1.8 million in equity. And like, then we've just moved all that into lending and then raised other capital as well. But, I've seen the light. I'm like, when you get calls from I have a couple properties that you hang on to, but I'm just like, I don't know. For me and my personality, I'm just like, I don't want any rentals anymore. Like I'm done. I don't like, I don't know. It's a way to build wealth, and we obviously did very well. But there's just, like you said, there's just that sequence and that natural progression that people kind of go through with the rentals and the flipping and all that into the lending, and we're just kind of past that stage.
No, and it's great. And there's a time and a place for everything and everybody, but you can't. For people listening, you can't really go wrong if your strategy just ends up being, I'm just going to buy single families and hold on to them forever. Like that's going to make you a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But it's like at some point, what's good, better, and best with your time,
for sure,
resources, and then what skills do you have where you could maximize, the money you have in a different way, and we've both seen that lending, it's really hard to out something else. However, there is a very active component to it.
Yes.
But then there's also a very active component to owning rentals. It's
absolutely.
It's like so there's so many ways to win.
Well, and everybody talks about like the passive income, right? Like I used to strive for that. Passive income is bullshit. I don't believe it. It's like, I just don't believe in it anymore. Like the only thing that I can truly think that's like 100% passive is maybe like dividends from stocks. Other than that, like there's always some component of work. And the longer that I've been in like my entrepreneurial journey, I've realized that like I've fallen in love with the work itself. And so it's not like some days, like it'll be like my wife even will like, it'll be Saturday and like, we don't really have anything planned. And I'm like, kind of like twiddling my thumbs. And she's like, just go work. It's fine. Like, just, because I'm like, that's what I've learned to love and enjoy.
Yeah. It's a trap, but it can be a good trap. Like I've often thought sometimes it's like, I'm wearing my Utah sweatshirt game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, so sometimes I'm like, I don't know what else I like. Other than
Lending in football
3 months of the year where like I can be very distracted when it's like football season. But otherwise I'm like you sometimes. I'm like, well, I mean, obviously I love traveling and stuff like that, but sometimes it's like, well, let's go tinker on the machine.
Yeah.
Like, how can we get a little bit more efficient here? Or what, how can we raise a little bit more money here? We get in front of more borrowers or whatever it might be.
All the above.
But then I think that's where it's fun because then you never need to retire because even if you did, because I agree with you, maybe if you have a CD or a dividend stock, that's like probably
truly
passive as you're going to get.
Yep.
But you also then have to have an enormous amount of balance in there to feed whatever lifestyle you have.
Right.
And then what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
You just get to go golf every day. I mean, maybe that'd be cool. I don't know, but you got to have a purpose.
Well, and I think so with somebody else in the past, like, for example, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, right? Or X now, whatever you want to call it. When he ended up buying that, he like everyone's like, oh, well, he's one of the richest dudes on the planet. Like he doesn't need any more money. But I guarantee you that when he had to cash out some of his Tesla stock and go to these banks and borrow, like I'm sure in his mind he thought, man, if I had more money, I wouldn't have to go to all these people and do all these like backdoor deals to like make this work.
Right.
So like everyone who says like you are like you'll always have enough. Like I don't really believe. I think it's just human nature to like want more. Like
it is.
You see billionaires out there and they're still working because they love the journey, not the destination.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Now some of them probably have an addiction, and maybe we, just like you can get addicted to drugs, you can get addicted to work.
Yeah. Workaholic for sure.
And then maybe there's another conversation about, well, you're doing that, and then maybe other parts of your life are off balance or off kilter.
Right.
What is it that you really want? But guys, but the to progress like needs people that are driven, even if it's like kind of crazy at times. I mean, just think of like the iPhone. Like think of how that's revolutionized so many industries, the world, create so much abundance. But it's just like one crazy idea, or Tesla or whatever. It's like you need the crazy people like that, but then you also need people that don't think that way, that want to just do 9 to 5, which is awesome, and work for them. And
and that, I mean, there's an element. I resonate with that now almost more. It's like being an entrepreneur is not for everybody.
No,
like there's, for example, like my mom, for example, she is like the definition of a 9 to 5 employee.
Yep.
But in our society, it's almost like that's poo-pooed on, like everyone looks down and you're like, oh, everybody should be starting a business. But the thing is, like, she is a kick-ass employee. She is so dedicated. She is so loyal. For me, that just eats me up. I can't, like, it drives me crazy. But she has tried to like businesses, but like, she's just like paralyzed by, she can't even get past the first stage of like setting up a website or like doing, and it's like, it's just such a basic thing that like, I have a new business idea and within 30 seconds, I've got a website and a logo and all this other stuff that you crank out, but like some people, they're just not built for it, and that's okay. That's totally fine.
Yep. Yeah. And that's how I think just like we all have different personalities, we like different things. However, we all come out, everyone's wired slightly different. And it's I was talking with somebody yesterday about this too. It's like, it is what it is. Like I think they say there's 10 or 15% of the population that has that entrepreneurial, like that drive, that like, this is how I'm doing it. Then there's probably a percentage that are just, their natural inclination is to just kind of just be chill and do nothing. And then there's some that's like, just like your mom, like that's where they get their greatest joy, is just being awesome at their job. Like you got to have all that. If everyone was entrepreneurs, I don't think it would work.
Right. Right.
But if everyone was just like a worker bee,
that doesn't work either,
because someone needs to create something. So it is pretty fascinating when you think about it like that. And then inside of your business, we were just kind of talking too about, you need those different people that have to really grow a business, you need this have people that have different skill sets to complement one another. You know, even as we'll talk about lending, like you need somebody that just has a pretty good separate business with a lot of extra cash that can find you, that will be responsible and deploy it.
Yes.
You know, and then we're helping other people buy properties, or need a little bit of everybody to make
it all work. Yeah. Okay. So let's transition into that, because obviously this is the lender podcast. So we talk about lending.
Yeah.
So, I know more about you than the audience does. So give us, you know, your background. Just like, I want to hear everything from like the very beginning to like where you are now and how you transitioned into lending.
Cool. Yeah. I'll try to paint the picture, but not be too long with it. But, you know, I don't know, like so I'm 48. I've been doing this for basically 20 years but when I graduated from the U, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I mean, I got a job. So I got a degree in finance. Numbers always made sense to me. Once I learned kind of like that financial calculator, I was one of those that was always
Excel spreadsheets and like,
okay, what's the future value of this number? What's the present value?
Ditto.
If I get 5%, 7%, 8%, 9%, 10%, what will that be worth in 20 years? So that kind of stuff, that always made sense to me more than anything. Not that I'm like a genius nerd, finance nerd, but you know, I remember one of the, I guess, things that my dad introduced me to was that rule of 72.
Yep.
You know, and so that stuck with me forever. It's like, oh, if I get 10%, 72 divided by 10,
7.5 years.
Double my money in 7 years. Yeah. It's like, so that value of the interest rate.
Yep.
You know, and so anyway, I got a job. It was kind of selling group health insurance. And I was working for a guy that was it's kind of like a startup. He's an entrepreneur, and he still to this day is one of my main trusted investors and partners on deals. But I worked for him, and I got to the point where I was making enough money where my wife and we could afford our first house. So we went and it's kind of ironic because I've been flipping in the distressed home market, but I was like, I need something new because I'm not going to be able to fix a thing. Even to this day, it'd take me a week. And I flipped like 450 houses. But I'm more one of those like probably, cut 4 times and measure once. Instead, I just get too impatient. No? But anyway, so we went into the model home, and I've told this story before, but it kind of like is an introduction into like, how I got started in this. And I'm like, well, I don't have an agent. Do you do a discount? And they're like, no, but we do pay a realtor. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm an agent, And so by the time on it, I got my license so I could get paid a commission to buy it. And so our first primary residence, we got in basically no money down because I credited my commission for an FHA 3%. The builder paid 3% closing costs. So our first house, we got into like $500.
That's amazing.
So I'm like, well, this is interesting.
That's pretty slick.
So then I was like, hey, this is a really easy job. And now that I have my license, so I got a job working for the builder for 4 years. So that's kind of how I got into real estate. But I could tell kind of like, that was like, it was commission, but it felt like a 9 to 5, like hours at the model. And it wasn't really stimulating or engaging because the builder was such a good marketer that it was like, people would just walk in and be like, well, I want that. So it was good money, but it was like draining.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I'm going to die.
Not very stimulating.
Yeah. So then a buddy from high school, to fast forward, he was already kind of in the bank-owned flipper world. This would have been in 2004 here in Salt Lake. So we did a couple together, and I'm like, this will work. So then I quit. And then really for the last 20 years, the first part of it was like, we just figured out how to kind of just struggle along. We maybe took one course, but the internet wasn't big. Like you just kind of had to figure it out.
Yeah. Yep.
Read books. And at the end of the day, it's not that hard.
Right.
Buy it low, rehab, sell
it. Yeah.
But
profit.
And then we did volume. And then over the years, raising money from private high net worth guys to fund our flips because we weren't getting money from banks. We lucked out where we found some hard money lenders, right? They're always, like everybody always needs money.
Yep.
And there's always somebody that has.
This has been a thing for decades. Yeah.
Going back as old as you can get. So there's always a need for it, whether it's bank or private or, And so then about 12 years ago, started doing the hard money. And so fast forward, I kind of have like 4 buckets. I've got the hard money's the biggest bucket. I've done over 1,400 of these loans, probably an aggregate, funding volume of about 400 million. We'll have about 50 million out at any one time. And I have some developments I'm doing. That's kind of the other bucket. And then buy and hold rentals, is the other bucket. And then I do have a brokerage, which is really just more a means to an end to facilitate my own deals, and then agents that are other investor minded. But definitely the hard money is number one. The flips and the rehab and the developments, is a little bit more like we talked about passive. I got a team that can kind of do that.
Yep.
So, you just got to kind of tee them up, set them up, and then hire the right people to execute on it. And then the rentals, again, are very active while you're acquiring them and financing them. But managers and people in place, those could be a little bit more, passive. You got to kind of check in on those. But that's kind of the quick history of where I've been. And I've just been here in Utah. I've occasionally done some loans like with you in Idaho and some other places. But over the years, and we can talk about this too, it's just, unless you're going to scale and really get bigger, like
nationwide
done, dude, if you want to be nimble and grow a nice little thing, just
stay local. Okay, which I definitely do want to touch on that more, absolutely. But I've always been curious why you still flip, because so here's like my light bulb moment when and you probably I don't think you've even heard this story, but this was like around COVID time. We were busy flipping a house. The numbers were great. Everything was supposed to go well. Then COVID hit. We had supply shortages and delays and other things like that. And just about everything that could have gone wrong with this project did go wrong. I probably should have been better at like notifying you or alerting. Didn't. Anyway, so this project went on longer than it should have. We finally cashed out. But when we cashed out, I remember looking at the settlement statement and like, I think we basically broke even. We maybe made like $1,200, but my hard money lender, he made like 25 grand, and he didn't like bat an eye. He didn't have like an ounce of lost sleep like I had. And that was when I was like, okay, I need to look more into this, because I didn't do anything, and he made 25 times what I did, And so anyway, that was kind of the catalyst that started it all. So I'm curious, having that experience, and like, obviously we've had projects that have done well and we've made good money with them as well. But I'm curious why you still choose to flip, when you don't have to.
Yeah. Well, there's probably a few different reasons, and maybe these aren't in order. That's what I started doing, and we did a lot of it. So you get good at it. You get a lot of reps at the plate. So it ultimately becomes easier over time.
Yep.
And then, I built out a team, and we got a little sideshow here.
Okay.
Just keep it going. But, you build out a team and systems and processes. So it does get easier. So when it gets easier, it gets funner, and then I just love seeing that value add of taking a really garbage look. So there is some satisfaction in like, this is just really cool. Like I really like doing it and seeing the process. Now, can it be frustrating? Absolutely.
100%.
I'd say I've lost on 10% of all the flips that I've done.
Oh, well, okay.
So if I've done 450, I track it. Like I probably lost money on 45. Some of them, some were minimal, like a few $1,000. I think my largest loss was like 180,000 flip. But speaking to like a flip and a development, I have a development right now that we are going to lose about $1 million. It's crazy. It's just bad timing. So it's like, why in the world am I doing this?
Yes, that's my question.
Do you know how hard it would be to lose $1 million in hard money lending? It would just be next to impossible.
Yeah.
The way that we set.
Yeah, unless you do something ridiculous, but yeah.
But the other reason is it does help me stay very relevant and up to date on like just the process, the costs, comping stuff. To take a property back, which has benefited me. I've already got a team in place that can handle that remodel and, finish it off if a borrower craps out.
Yeah.
Right. So it is a backup for the lending in that I'm always up to date on like building costs, cost of goods, vendors, contractors, I've had my team come and help list my borrowers' properties, troubleshoot, come in and save properties that needed, like, the rehab crew to do it because my borrowers couldn't do it. Now, that's probably flip, but it is a byproduct, like a really helpful resource in the lending business as well. So I would not be able to do the lending if I had to be as hands-on as I used to be in the flip. But now really and also like my borrowers, we've like, hey, I can't do this one. Do you want to do it? So sometimes deals come around a little easier and you don't have to hunt for them.
I can't pass this one up. I have to,
And so, and it's another way, like I've done, it's also a way to just create other relationships. Like I have this group in Southern California. We've probably done like 20 flips together.
Cool.
And it's great because I won't maybe make as much as if I was doing it myself, but I can leverage their money, my crew. And it's also cool because it's like, these guys are awesome. I know we'll do other different deals, probably lending and stuff like that. So I don't know. That's maybe a word salad of an answer, but I guess number one is I love just seeing that value creation. To see
before and afters.
Yes. And I do love the vision of it all, like laying out spaces, kind of envisioning like what it will look like and then see it get there. So that is really cool and gratifying. You stay up to date on the trends, what people are really doing in the trenches. And then it's also a really good, when you need to go to plan B or C on some of your loans, recreate the wheel.
You've already got the team in place and everything.
Now, with all that being said, I probably would grow the lending bigger if I just focused exclusively 100% on that. But maybe I'm a little bit of a squirrel because it's like I get sometimes a little newer, complacent. It's like, well, let's do some more of this, and
it's fun, it's different, it's new, it's exciting,
and it can get a little old, but it also, I don't know. I find a lot of joy in just doing it, and it's kind of fun. You do enough in the valley, and it's like I
have that one and that one and that one.
I have an assistant that every time we finish a flip or even fund a loan, throws it on a Google Maps, like a little pin.
Oh, cool.
So it's fun at times.
You can see the whole.
It's like, holy cow. But it also is a representation of like where the distressed properties would be in a valley.
That's a good point.
And it's not that hard to figure out. It's older neighborhoods, and then in more affluent areas, deals is because it's more of like an estate sale versus like financial distress.
Right.
But then it's like the neighborhoods where I don't know at all. It's usually the newer neighborhoods because they're too new.
Yeah. No one's flipping there
to have problems. So anyway, that would be the answer about why you still flip. Yeah. I would bet I'll be doing it forever.
Interesting.
Just because it's cool.
Yeah.
What I don't like as much is the developments. And part of it's because to me, it's just so agonizing to get going. And you have to rely on so many different government entities and
the permits and the zoning.
The zoning, the planning commission, the infrastructure build out. Now, like then once you're done with all that nonsense and you're like framing, then it's fun.
Yeah.
Because it's like a flip. Like
then it goes quick.
You take kind of some of the risk off the table. But I'm a little bit like I like quick decision making. That's why flips are good, and obviously the lending, because like you don't have time to sit around and be like, well, let's have a committee meeting to fund this flip. It's like you just got to say yes or no. Yep.
And the thing is, like, there's no right or wrong answer. Like if a really good deal came across my desk, which they have, I don't think I told you about this one. We bought a 9-plex for $150,000.
That's insane.
And like it was in shambles. Like quite literally, you could like walk up to it and almost push it over. Like it was horrible. But like deals like that still come across your desk, and like that's the other nice thing about being in the lending space is like it's just so versatile. You've now got access to capital, which sometimes you might not have had as a flipper because you're going to another lender. It's just like it just opens the doors. The other thing too is that and I'm sure you've seen this, I don't think there's never been anyone who has woken up, or maybe there are, I don't know, but I just said, I'm going to be a hard money lender. Yeah. Like you don't come out of college and be like, I'm going to lend on real estate. No, like you either go like the traditional banking finance route and then you get fed up with like the stupid loan products. And then you're like, okay, let's do this. Or you're in rentals and then flip like a next good step. And so all that to say that like, I don't think you could become a lender unless you had some sort of background or context on property values and how the paperwork goes through and the title companies and all that kind of stuff just kind of comes together. There's just no other way to do it.
I don't think so. I mean, not unless like, you know, maybe my kid,
Where he's been around to it.
right?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
something like that. But yeah, a lot, there's a lot to it. And you've seen it. It's like, if you don't, you got to kind of go through all those different aspects of a transaction and see it from different sides. So you know what risks and opportunities are out there. Like if you haven't flipped yourself, you don't get the nuances of, well, yeah, I get why my borrower's taking a little bit longer.
Yes.
Because I've made the same stupid mistakes.
I have too.
Myself.
Yep.
And I get it. And you don't quite know if you should drop the price or not. And you get an ego of like, oh, I did such a good job on that.
Yes.
You know, it's like, yeah, but no one cares. The market does not care how cool,
How pretty it is.
how much time you spent picking out that tile.
Yep.
You know, like, and the ebbs and the flows in the market. And so you have a little bit, sometimes I wonder if I have too much compassion or empathy to my borrowers. Cause I'm like, well, I get it. Like
I've been there.
I didn't pull a permit. Like, yeah, I know the loan's due at 6 months, but they're not done with it.
Yeah.
And they're on the right track. I can see how they're going to finish. And, but so having that experience is super helpful, or having that experience, you know, where you borrow gap money or down payment funds when you're just starting out. Like, you get those nuances of how borrowers struggle to put together the funds to like complete the deal, you know, because you've been there.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And you get the complexities of a weird title company every once in a while, or dropping the ball with doc. How hard it is sometimes to get insurance.
Yes.
You know, like if you don't have that perspective of being on the other side of the table, it is maybe different as a lender. And we could talk about this. Like there's the art and the science. Like you've got to know the transactional, the laws, the documents. And we've had tons of phone calls about this. But at some point, if you don't get that, like you're dealing with the human property value, sometimes you got to put those documents to the side.
Like,
and
shit happens.
Coach them up, sort through things, figure out how you're going to get out of that deal. And it's not as always black and white as saying, hey, you're due on this date, pay us back. It's like, you know,
absolutely.
You got to not really color outside the lines, but you got to think outside the lines, you know, a lot.
Which it goes to like as a borrower now turned, I appreciate that. We had, we borrowed from you on a triplex.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember that one, but that was right. Like everything was going according to plan. And then that was right when interest rates shot up. And so like everything was just on hold. We're like, so anyway, it took us like 14 months, I think, to like get rid of this project. And like, it was a big renovation. Like it was like probably 150,000 in rehab. But it just like all of a sudden rates shot up to 8% and no one's buying because the numbers don't pan out. And so like, anyway, all that to say, like, I appreciate that you were lenient with us because like, I didn't have another way to exit this. Like that was my exit strategy, was to sell this place and it wasn't selling. So what do I do? You know?
Well, there's a couple, like one, let's just look at it. Like you're a responsible borrower, right? Like, so when you have a responsible borrower that also has resources, and it may not be ideal, right? But like, I knew you would get it to the finish line. I would, for a couple reasons. One, you're way invested in it. You're smart, you're resourceful, you're capable. It's also in a market in Idaho that like, I don't know.
Aren't familiar with.
Why would I drop the hammer on you? Because I would just be setting myself up for a giant failure. You know, now like, let's say don't know what you're doing. You don't have any money into it. You have nothing to gain or lose. Like I'm going to have to jump in and do that. But then there's another reason too. It's like, you're a good borrower. Okay. Yeah. But who cares? Because my value in the loan is still really good. Because you've plowed a ton of money into it. You've remodeled it. Yeah, the market's slow, but you could still sell it for $100,000 less, and I'm going to get paid off. And so if I'm a little patient with you, I'm actually helping myself anyway. And even though it doesn't look good on paper that you went a year overdue, we're going to still have a great relationship. You're going to want to borrow money again. I'm going to want to lend money to you again. Where if I'm just like, you signed a contract
12 months, like,
it said
we're starting foreclosure.
6 months. You're pissed off. I'm pissed off. I have a property that I don't really want. You know what I mean? And it may be half finished. So, I mean, there's so much to the strategy. Now, you and I, as private local lenders that are taking, money from private high net worth people, as long as we're being moral, ethical, and legal, we can be very patient in how we run our business. That's where a lot of times like a hedge fund or a institutional, or a regular lender, they can't.
Yes.
Because they're just have too complex of a system. Then they are required. They're not as intimate as we can be.
Yep.
And they have different covenants and controls on the money where they get it from, where they have to file a notice of default.
Yep.
They have to send those collection notices, and they're going to probably blow up a lot of deals that otherwise wouldn't need to get blown up
Because of that.
because perform and behave in a certain way.
Yeah. Well, I remember asking you once about selling these notes on the secondary market.
Yep.
And you mentioned is it a strategy? Sure. Do I do that? No. And you basically mentioned you're going to give these loans off to a third party servicer who is just going to be a piece of paper in a file cabinet. You lose that personal touch, and you also lose that leniency. No, the note says this comes due at 12 months. It's now 14 months. We're going to start the foreclosure process. Whereas just like you said, my depends on repeat borrowers. And if I start the foreclosure process, do you ever think that borrower is going to come back? And where you said they've had a history of doing 5, 6, 7, 8 successful loans, and then we just have this one that kind of went south.
Yeah.
It's not a deal breaker.
Yeah. No, and there is a sweet spot though. My business has been great. It's done very, very well, but you can only be so ambitious in the way that we have our set up, because if say I have 50 million out, if I were to have 100 million out, now my decision making is different, because I can't and on top of every single deal in the same way that I could if it was smaller.
Yes.
So then that means you've got to now hire scale, have more people. You've got to have more stringent controls in place. Your underwriting's got to be a little different. So there is a sweet spot for you as the operator of the hard money, where it just really goes back to what is it that you really want? You could raise a big fund, have a hedge fund, have it be very institutionalized, and probably make way more money. You're building out a big team.
Yeah.
I can do everything I'm doing with pretty much just me and the title company.
Amazing.
So it really goes back to what is it that you really want? If people are listening are probably being well, you shouldn't do it that way. It's maybe you're right. But that's how I've just chosen. This is just from my perspective. This has worked for me. It's been great, but there's so many different ways that you could structure it. So that's where, I've maybe gone the lazy route. I like good referrals. I like repeat borrowers. So what does that mean? A lot of times I just got to be a little bit more flexible, and, never compromise value though. Rule number one is never lose your investors' money.
Yep.
All this flexibility or patience that we're talking about, that doesn't exist if the deal sucks, and if the value's not good, and if the borrower's not doing or trying.
Right.
Then you've got to drop the hammer, foreclose, move on,
For sure.
property back, because I've had that happen where it was not as capable as I thought. And it's my best path actually is just me to take it back and do it.
And I can do way better myself.
And quicker. And that means I'll get the money back faster from my investors.
Yeah.
And then we can recycle it. And so I don't know, the market is a little tougher right now. So I have more issue loans, but it's still such a small percentage
Relative to everything else.
else.
Okay.
And really, it's not the value that makes me nervous. It's more of just, it's extra conversations. It's extra hand holding. It's extra patience.
You just have to be more involved.
Yep.
Whereas
More involved.
2020, 2021, you were just cranking those loans like crazy.
Crap. Did I not get you that payoff letter? I think yeah, of course, pay me back.
Absolutely. Okay. So tell me more about how you specifically structure your business, and typically we dive in pretty deep if you're comfortable with sharing that. You've mentioned you've got roughly 50 million, but tell us how many loans that typically involves, how many investors, how quickly are you churning through these, average loan lengths, give us everything.
Yeah. Then you can jump in and kind of do bullet point questions. But every loan I do, I set up usually on a 6-month term. And then the way I structure it, and again, going to be a different way to structure it, but we make it really easy where we let the interest accrue. So my borrower pays back the loan, so my average payback is about 8 months.
Okay.
On 6-month terms. The longest I've ever let a loan go is about 4 years. And this was on a fix and flip. And the reason I let it go that long is because the value is still there. Like my final payoff with accrued interest, $450, starting at like $250, but they sold it for $900. So I'm like, as long as you know,
it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
And he's a guy that I'd done like 30 loans with. So I knew at some point he just like got stuck on this one. The value is still there. He put it on the back burner, and that's okay because he didn't maybe come out okay, but he came out just fine. So going back to kind of the numbers, month terms, average is about 8 months payback, but I do balloon payments. So I let the interest accrue. I don't require monthly payments. That's why I want to get a good down payment and make sure there's good value add and they have the money to do that. Because then if that's the case, I'd rather not have the complexity of collecting payments because I usually average having about 110 loans out at one time. So yes, is it maybe smarter to take payments? Yes. Does it make it more complicated? Yes. I'd have to have like more of a devout servicing arm to it. But if I can get the value in that deal right from the get-go, I'm not going to have a problem as long as I stay on top of it. And then my life is way simpler.
Yeah.
2 accounting periods. When we fund it,
when it closes.
And then when it closes.
Yeah.
So the accrued interest, borrowers are just paying a balloon. So behind the scenes, I structure with my investors the same way. I'm getting paid. You're not getting interest until this pays off.
Yeah.
So then that makes it easy. I don't have to set up ACH deposits. So some investors don't like that because they want the monthly. But the reality is for some of my guys that have larger positions, they're basically getting a balloon payment once or twice a month because, they have enough deals in the pipe that they
don't really care. Yeah.
They're just consistently getting paid off, So set up, and again, so many people could set this up differently, but how I've decided to set up is just like basically one-off trusted investing. So from the outside, it probably looks like a fund, but behind the scenes, I'm just matching on every single loan, one investor with one deal.
Oh,
so I have a lot of these little loans out there, or a lot of positions with my investors that just have money in one deal at a time, but they may have 10 separate loans that they're involved in. Like some other fund structures, they would, say right now I have 13 to 15 active investors. Some people would, set up a fund where like their money's like in a mutual fund, like behind the scenes, it's all
pooled together. Yeah.
And everybody has a percentage of what they own in the fund. And then I would just have the right based on the fund structure to deploy those funds in the deals that I think make sense.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more manual for me. Like if you're my investor, I'm like, hey, Bryce, here's a deal for he's buying it for 300. He's going to put 40,000 down. We're going to fund 260. Why don't you come in on this one and fund 240 of the 260? And then, so I put money in on every single deal with my investor. So then that deal's done. We fund it, we close it and move on. And then I just have like 100 of those.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it is a little bit more, so it's a little bit more manual in that there's a lot of communication. But what's nice is it's also a touching point
every
time.
Yeah.
I get to know my investors really well. They get to know me really well. We have a lot of confidence and trust. And it's also kind of a second set of eyes, even though they completely rely on me for the underwriting. There's been plenty of times where they'll notice something that maybe I overlooked. They're like, well, did you think about like the zoning on this or whatever it might be?
Oh yeah.
So it's also really smart guy, in some way double stamping, the deal, even though they're really relying on me for all the underwriting. And then it makes it easy. If one deal goes bad, I only have to deal with this one person.
As opposed to 6 or all of them in the fund. Yeah.
Now, there's probably people out there that structure it different that just works for them. Like this is just how we've done it and it works for me.
Yeah. So it's because 2 thoughts. A, when I started doing this, I basically do everything you do.
Yep.
Like I've completely ripped off your model, and that's how we do it. I see a lot of pros to doing it that way. The funny thing is, pretty much every lender that I talk to, they're like, "You're insane. I can't believe you do that. You don't collect monthly payments."
Yeah.
But like, I'm with you. I don't have to like worry about the ACH payments. I don't have to worry about the complicated QuickBooks. Like, I just, every time a loan pays off, then I just disperse it to the investors.
Yep.
And they're grateful. And typically, like, so we have an actual fund set up.
Yeah.
And we pool all the money together. But I still, even though all the funds are pooled, I still logically break it up for the investors.
Yep.
So that I can say, like, we've got 4 specific investors on this deal. And that way I can take, so say I have investor A, I've got 100,000 from them. I'll carve that up into 4 chunks of 25, and I'll put them on property A, B, C, and D. And then as those properties pay off, and so again, it's the same way that you do it. Yes, we have the funds rather than like kind of the direct placement method. But when you stagger the loans like that, like you said, they're getting a payoff at least once a month anyway. Sometimes maybe like every 6 to 8 weeks, but like it's still regular enough that like they don't feel like they're in the dark.
And it provides liquidity quicker. If my investors want to, like, I've had, hey, on this next payoff, send me the money back because I'm buying a place in Solitude or whatever.
Got it.
But there's also, like, when you also think about your strategy, sometimes I feel a little handcuffed, not really handcuffed, but like I don't always know. I mean, I do at this point that I generally know what appetite my guys have. So I pretty much know when I'm on the phone with somebody, because I have patients and I'm updating everything daily, where if Fred is like, hey, I got this, I need to close on Friday, can you do it? Even though I haven't actually asked my investors yet, I usually always know what kind of balances they have available so that I can commit and say, yeah, we can do it. Right.
Interesting.
So sometimes though, if I get a lot of requests, I got to kind of juggle for a minute and be like, hey, give me a day to get back to you.
Because I got to talk to
this
this investor.
Fast,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I got to talk to this guy to make sure the money's there. Whereas, like, let's say I had a fund and I knew I had $4 million sitting because people had agreed to our model and they already deposited, also obligated to start paying them on that money over the years. And I can't replicate, but I'm pretty sure I'd have more problem loans because I would have that pressure of needing to deploy the money because I'm paying for it.
Yeah.
And I know I have it. So I'm like, oh, well, I got 5 opportunities. Yeah, I got the money. I'll do it. Right. So it is kind of nice the way I have it. There is a little bit of check and balance because I can't just always say yes. Sometimes I don't have enough money. Sometimes I know I have more money that I could deploy. But the nice thing is I'm not until we fund the deal anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like there's good and bad.
Right.
Sometimes I really have appreciated that it's not always just an unlimited tapping of funds, because you do got to think about, okay, well, is that the right one to do? Or, oh, he's out of money, I can't do this one. And I hate saying no.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's a good thing versus having just an unlimited checkbook that you feel like you've got to get these funds out. You're undoubtedly make some really terrible loans.
Yeah.
And I've seen that when I've been flush with money and guys really want to get their money out. I'm probably saying yes to some loans that I really shouldn't have because I had the money to do it.
Do you, I want to hear like your worst, like problem loan, like either you foreclosed or took back the property. Like what's the one that just like comes to mind?
Well, okay. I'll give you the example, but before I do that, I'll maybe just summarize where I see some problems come.
Sure.
Some are I've had borrowers die mid flip. And then it's like, crap.
Now what? Yeah.
Like who actually is taking this over?
Well, and how do you find out too? Like,
well, it was like, I think the contractor, his agent, called me, and he's a guy. I had done like multiple loans for the guy. I think he just like had a heart attack or something like that. So the other thing that will happen is life just happens to people. Like maybe someone's going through a divorce, or also like I've had guys that on drugs and addicted to something. And so then it's like their behavior changes, then the deal changes. It becomes a problem where it otherwise wouldn't become a problem. I've had people arrested and put in jail. I've had They probably ended up in jail and I didn't know it, but I've definitely had people, stealing money from like gap lenders that provided the down payment and the rehab money that ultimately resulted in just a terrible situation, a challenging situation for the loan. You have borrowers that just don't care the way you think they would care. Like they just peace out and it's like, or they don't pay attention to the flip, And so I guess let's see. I actually gave this example, but I'll give it again. Cause it does illustrate how irresponsible and ignorant some people can be on all sides of the deal. Right. So I funded this deal and it was a pretty heavy value add in Salt Lake. Like it needed structural engineering. It needed some serious permitting.
It's not just painting carpet.
Dude, it's not just painting carpet.
Yeah.
It probably was projected to be like a couple $100,000 remodel. And this borrower I knew was new, but they seemed really gung-ho, ambitious. We had done at least 2 successfully, but they were trying to do 3 at a time. And so looking back now, I never should have done it, but we had the money to do it. And so what they did was they were resourceful enough and animated and never asked. They found somebody that was also new to investing, that his mom had just sold a restaurant and he had like $1 million. And his mom's like, yeah, why don't you go invest it? So it's kind of like the perfect storm where you've got a new guy anxious to deploy his money that has never done a real estate deal, doesn't really know how to protect himself. So he basically just lends this borrower $1 million to use on my loans and rehab money, supposed rehab money for the flips. So what ultimately happened is I don't think these people set out my borrower to be deceptive and have it be a con, but I think they were loose and irresponsible enough where they kind of robbed from Peter to just fund their lifestyle and not remodel the properties.
So no work was going on the property at all?
Like they did enough to make it look like something was happening. But I think what they did is they took that money and used it for trips, vacations. Like I just don't think they were used to seeing that large of amount of money and they just got tempted and they were just crappy investors, and they learned enough to be dangerous to know how to get into some deals and talk people into getting money. So what ended up happening is this guy that just lost all this money, obviously he is beyond upset. He didn't protect himself. He didn't draw the money out, secure himself with a lien. He just basically had some really dumb joint venture agreement with these guys. And so he found an attorney that, thought he was Johnny Cochran, and he was an idiot too. And he sued everybody. He sued me. He sued the borrower, of course. And what ended up happening is he had no claim against us. He wasted a year of our time because it was during COVID. He halted our foreclosure sale. He got us in front of a judge. Long story short is not only did he lose the case against us, but we won a case against him, which I dropped because it's like, this guy's, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
He still doesn't know what he's doing. Not only has he lost all of his mom's money, but now he's lost attorney's fees. Like, I'm not going to rub it in. I'm just glad that I could be out of it.
Yep.
And who knows what happened with the borrower. I never heard back from them again because I didn't need to, because I just said, you guys are done. I'm foreclosing on these. And the end result for me, and this is the reminder of why you can still do it the way we've done it and allow for accruing interest. Like, who cares payments? Because they would have quit making them anyway.
That's true.
But my loan still had good value because I underwrote it where, with the down payment, even accounting for accrued interest for both what I owe my investor as well as what I'm hoping we'll get in return as profit, I still had a good margin where what I ended up doing was selling it to another investor. I still got paid off in full. He still made good money on the deal, on both of them actually. So we still came out of it just fine because we lent at a good value. So I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but you could lend to a criminal, you don't want to be implicit in the deal because,
yeah, you'll get in trouble there.
You'll get in trouble. But if you're lending at good value, at the end of the day, our backstop to get our money back is the property. It has nothing to do with the story. or the, the investor or other people, the contractors involved in the deal. But if you have good value, you're going to be able to get out of it as a lender, because that's what you got to remember is like, so say, go back to your example of some people say you're crazy not to take payments. I would say you're crazy to take payments if you don't understand the value of the property.
If you're doing 100% financing. Yeah.
Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. Okay. Require payments, charge 20%. But if you're at 100% of value and you're toast.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're toast.
The one thing that I do kind of like with, and not enough to change my model, I don't think, but people have said that as soon as payments stop coming in, then it's like a pre-warning indicator that like something's going on. We should probably get on top of this before it becomes a big issue. So I think that's probably one pro that I am missing, but also like a lot of that can just come from like increasing and that's
what I was gonna say. Which ultimately I think will help you solve the problem better. There's been so many times where it's not like I'm playing a game with the borrower, but if I wasn't always in constant communication, and it's just my personality, I'm not like, I don't yell. I get mad every once in a while, but it's like, I am way more.
Just over Utah football, right?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm the guy in high school who's always on the edge with running shoes. Like, okay,
fight or flight, you're out of there.
Last time to run, but I'll cheer on my buddy while he's fighting in the meantime, but I'm not the one stepping in, getting all aggressive and trying to prove a point. I mean, yes, if the capital's at risk, you got to jump in and make a decision quicker to kind of retrieve your money. But yeah, you'll know that something's going on. But if you're communicating with the borrower, you'll know too, because they don't call you back.
Yeah.
That's the same as like not sending in a payment.
When they're dodging your phone calls.
They don't call you back, or they respond back with some really stupid answer. Like, yeah, I get you're busy, bro. I'm busy.
Yeah.
What have you been doing for 5 weeks? Well,
Well, and you just need like shoot me a text or like, yes, how's it going? That's it.
Yeah, exactly. So just by people's behavior, just like if you didn't have a payment coming in some ways, a payment might mask that the situation's worse than it is, because they're like, oh, I'll just keep, I'll just make that payment even though they're not doing crap on the house. Yeah. So it can go
both ways.
Yeah. You got to have a system to follow up. You got to have a system to keep in. So we were talking earlier about social media. Mm-hmm. It's a love-hate thing, but social media's helped me a ton sometimes just to follow borrowers.
Oh,
to see, because you can sense
if they're on a trip in Cabo that they're
posting for 4 weeks, or the guy that's always posting about his deals. You're like, I don't even need an update because
I see it. I see going on.
So there's some creative ways, and then when you really need to worry about something or not. I have another assistant that takes, and I can in your software, and you're way more advanced than I am, but I have an assistant that will go and update every week, if a property's been listed. So, if I see the value's already been created, I don't need to worry too much about that borrower. I don't care if, great, don't make payments because, go back to that one example. My loan payoff's $450, but the house is worth $900. Take all the time you want.
Yeah.
But then I can kind of narrow down and really focus on, say those 20, or not 20, but maybe 10 loans at a time that I know
attention,
a weekly check-in, a drive-by, So you get a groove of how to be more efficient, and kind of some of those signs to look for that would, in lieu of somebody not making a payment, is still a red flag that okay, I need to check in on this one.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
Ooh, that's a really good point. Because
human behavior, you'll know it quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, people are embarrassed. They don't want to show. They don't want to see.
And I think having a good relationship with your borrowers is a good thing. And now it can kind of put you in an awkward situation. I have a couple right now where I'll notice default on borrowers that I genuinely really like, and we've hung out, and I've done loans for years with them.
That's hard.
But then I'm like, dude, I get you got stuff going on in your life, and I want to be there to kind of talk to you about that part. But on the flip side, I'm also like, you owe us money. I'm foreclosing on your properties. It's kind of a weird, but I've gotten a lot of cooperation with borrowers over the years to do things that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have done if I, behind a computer screen, a number Like say, sometimes they'd be a heck of a lot easier if they just deeded you back the property.
Yeah, I just
But
walked
if
away.
you have an adversarial relationship with them, they may just like give you the bird and be like, so sometimes it helps in negotiating, or it helps to know enough about the deal where if they're second lien holders, you know who they are. You can call them and say, hey, are you going to take less so we can get this deal done? Or am I going to have to foreclose? So it can be really exhausting of, relationships and communications, but ultimately it saves you. And that goes back to what I talked about earlier. I'm not able to do that if I have 2 to 3 times the loan volume, which that can be attractive because if you go, oh, I make this much, I can make 3 times as much. But I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, I might have 3 times not even 3 times the problems, 10 times the problems.
Yeah.
And is that, it goes back to, is that what I really want?
Right. It's not worth it.
I still feel like it's and it's manageable.
Mm-hmm.
And, you got to sometimes you got to say no. And then over time, like you say yes to more quality people, then it's just so much easier.
It's just butter and everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a good segue into another question. So when you're charging like a set of points and your fees, like you can, you said like with your spreadsheets, you can very easily see like, this is roughly what I'm going to make this year.
Oh, 100%.
Like you can reverse engineer, like, very, very simply. But the thing is, in business, everyone's always about like scale and bigger and better. And like after a while, you theoretically can't scale unless you bring on more capital or charge more fees. How do you combat that, or do you combat that? And it's like, no, this is just kind of like a nice lifestyle business where like I'm like it's just churning on autopilot. It makes good money, and that's it. Like, how do you fight with that?
Yeah,
or do you at all?
Yeah, I think it's progressed. Like when we started with like a few 100,000, like obviously I want
to scale,
bigger, and then it actually got a little nerve wracking during COVID because we got up to 75 million, and I'm like, oh,
that's a lot.
And the interest rate changed, and thank goodness dropped. Like it was good because we got way more payoffs than we were putting out money because people were just a little gun shy. So I just feel so fortunate because we got so much paid off and we didn't deploy that much that it really
balanced it out.
So I think I'm the latter right now, with the caveat that I don't want to say stagnant.
Yes.
And so then it's like, I do want to progress. I do want to grow. But that's meant is so now what I need to do, it's like the small ball. Okay, how do I make some more efficiencies in how I'm lending? How can I improve the onboarding process? Like that's where you and I started talking about software stuff. Okay, so how can so that's where I feel like I'm growing now. It's just like the improvements in the system and process and
just get more efficient
behind the scenes, because I don't really want to grow that much more, like on the risk side because to your point, the only way to scale is, if that's your game, is one, if I could find investors that would take half the return that they want, I just made twice as much money.
Yes,
without having
to do anything.
I don't think I can charge more because then it doesn't make it sustainable for borrowers to get out of deals.
Yep.
So if charging more doesn't work, getting less of, getting a better rate on the cost of my money doesn't work, then I still got to make it interesting. And so how do I reach people in a different way? How can I grow? See that? And maybe that's why I still flip and do developments. Cause like you do get efficiency. So you have more time. What I really should just do is like actually take more time out, but
come joy love.
You get a little programmed and antsy, and there's a time and a place. I know, like here in a couple years, it'll look different and it'll be easier, and maybe there's a different model. Maybe I do want to grow it more, but for right now, it's more of a lifestyle thing. What is it that I really want? What risk do I really? What reward is out there? I'm not, at least right now, trying to solve this big problem of being the best lender in America. It's like my little niche here. And I think what might be the progression is I see this with one of my investors is he's in so many deals, but he's as passive as he can be in so many deals. but he also mentors. Like, I would love to get to a point, like, not with you because you're going to run and do your own thing because you're so, but like, say you weren't as much and you were more like your mom.
Yeah.
But you still have, like, be like, all right, Bryce, why don't you come work with me? I'm going to end up being successful enough where you just take this over. You still make really good money, and I can just invest my money with you.
Gotcha.
And it's like mentor and train you up and do that with other people. Like, I really like that part of it too. Like, learning from others and then just kind of giving back like what I've learned. So I don't know, that maybe is answering, like, it's lifestyle. Like, for me, I'm not, things have been great. I've got awesome relationships with investors and is new and exciting every day. Sometimes it's really annoying, but it's a problem you're solving every day, whether it's a big or a small one. And maybe that's the fun part about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, I think that's a great answer because I see a lot of people like everything is like growth. And if you're not growing, then what's the point? Is it what their mindset is? And I think you do reach a point, like, why are we just growing for the sake of growing? You're like, obviously it's like push yourself and have goals and like strive for these different things. But like, if you're doing like all your needs are met and everything's okay, like probably an okay spot to be too.
Then it's hard. It's like being present.
Yeah.
Enjoying life. Just all those things we always talk about or you hear about, right?
Yep.
Like, and there's no balance, I don't think, in life. It's the balance in life to me is just being, trying to just learn how to bob and weave with all where you really enjoy it is where you do have like, I mean, it's a beautiful Saturday here. We're talking and it's going to be a beautiful day. Like, you know what? There's probably work, but let's just, even if it's just enjoying, just enjoy the moment, but enjoy work. The problems because they're going to come. I mean, we were talking with your wife earlier about like even just like fitness, and eating and diet. Like there's, like the world's always like someone's dying. There's always opposition. So just enjoy
anything you do. Yeah.
Enjoy it. And because there's enough complexities with lending. I mean, from all sides of it, that it does take a lot of, you got to lean in and just know that it's going to go off script every once in a while. That's going to be okay. Yeah. And how do you fix it? How do you solve it?
But what business doesn't?
Yeah.
Whether you're flipping or lending, there's always something.
Yeah. And there's someone else that like going back to like the Elon Musk or like, there's always someone a little crazier that's trying to solve a way bigger problem that, even though we're all entrepreneurs, like that's not my level.
I'm not trying to get to Mars.
I'm trying to get to Mars. I'm just trying to, get some deals out and make some money and have other people make money and be successful
and have a good life and all the above. That's good. No, that's amazing. And that's probably to end the podcast just because that's great. I think that's a great thing to focus on and just like being present, like having a good life, having a sustainable business, being healthy and fit and all the above. And like, what more can you ask for?
Yeah. And then, the other point that where I've seen the most success come from, or one of the formulas, I think, and I think it applies to all areas of your life. And I mean, we could talk for way longer than this about how many bad decisions I make, you know what I mean? But I find, and sometimes you could be a little obsessive about it, and I think you're like this, but the more proactive you can be to solve the current problems and the current things and the current unknowns and be as prepared as possible, the way easier it is to solve the out of the blue react where you need to be reactive. But if you're always being reactive, like one quick example to end is like, as an investor, I've noticed over the years that even though it's annoying, like if all of my financials are up to date, taxes returns are done, P&Ls are done, property accounts reconciled, like I know where all my money is, dude, it makes it so much easier to do the next deal, say yes to the next deal, refinance that next property. But if I'm always in scramble mode, like, give me a minute, I got to get this up to date. And then I get other problems coming at me. It's just, that's where it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, your house is in order.
House is in order.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do. But if you can always have your house in order, like from all fronts, like financial, personal, relationships, like, I mean, freak, like I can't drive my car if it's
ditto
clean, right? And so what that allows me to do then is the more routinely you do that, the easier it is to stay on top of it. And then it's that much easier to take on that new endeavor, that new problem, or to solve that problem that comes at you out of left field. So you're like, well, crap, I can't I can't solve this problem now because like I've got to do my taxes for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Or whatever the example is, right? So
Yeah, everything's not on fire, and this makes everything so much easier.
there's going to be enough fires coming up. You might as well not start your own.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I love it. I love it. Well, Matt, seriously, thank you. This has been amazing.
No,
This
thanks
has
for
been
coming over. This is great.
a fun hour chatting with you. Give us for anybody who's listening who wants to either reach out or get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that? Strut all your socials, email.
Yeah, probably my website, crosfunding.com will have my contact info. m.b.strong is kind of my Instagram, where I really just try and post like videos, cut up videos like this about how to be better at, and then you can drop my email or phone number on the notes.
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes down below,
great.
so everybody can get a hold of you. And again, for anybody listening, if you're in the lending space and you're looking for just a little bit more as far as like how to improve your business or software or whatever it may be, we've got episodes coming out every single week just talking about lending and talking with other guests and everything like this. Until next week, awesome. Thanks for being here.